So we'll discuss some Inyani Yom Kippur. We'll discuss a little bit about Yom Kippur, and since this year is Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos, maybe we'll find something specific to Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos, among other issues. That's what we'll begin with this, and then we'll see where it takes us. So we know there's halacha. We know that Yom Kippur, there are different types of prohibitions on Yom Kippur, and one is achila and shtiya, eating and drinking, as well as rechitza, taking a shower, washing oneself, sicha, anointing yourself with oil, ne'ilas hasandal, leather shoes, but not, you can wear a leather belt, you can wear leather pants. There might be other issues there, but it won't be a Yom Kippur issue. It's only leather shoes that's an issue. As well as tashmish hamita, having relations with one's wife. Those are the 5 prohibitions on Yom Kippur. But the most severe of them all is eating and drinking. That comes with a chi of kares, an obligation, a penalty of kares. It's not clear exactly what kares means. It means to be cut off. Whatever it means exactly, none of the possibilities are too good. So it's something we try to avoid doing. Something which comes with the punishment of kares. So achila and shti are the most severe, because there's a discussion we'll get into whether the other 4 are biblical or rabbinical. But even if you hold they're all rabbinical, but only eating and drinking comes with the penalty of kares. So one is prohibited to eat on Yom Kippur. However, there's exceptions to all rules. And the halacha is a chole sheyesh bo sakana, someone who has a life-threatening ailment. In other words, if he doesn't eat, or she doesn't eat, she'll be putting herself in danger. So then the halacha is that person has to eat. They have a mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur. If a person is a chole sheyesh bo sakana, a person has to eat. How does a person have to eat on Yom Kippur, assuming you have to eat, like a chole? So that's a discussion in the poskim, in the commentaries, and the classical psak of many poskim and in Shulchan Aruch is, the Gemara tells us in Yuma, we have a principle about ma'achila noso kal tchila. We have a general rule, even when you have to do something which is against the norm, even though for me, I could eat, but on Yom Kippur we don't eat. So anytime you're doing something that isn't ideal, in theory, so then we try to minimize the prohibition. So if you're doing something you're really not allowed to do, so you always try to minimize it. So even though the halacha is, let's say a person, there's a certain amount which is larger than usual for the prescribed amount, but let's say you have to eat a certain amount on Yom Kippur to be liable to the penalty of kares, to be cut off. What happens if I eat less than that prescribed amount? Let's say I only take a bite of the food as opposed to eating the whole amount. So is that permitted then? So that's a discussion in the Gemara in Yuma, in the beginning of the 8th perek. It's a dispute between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish. It's called Chatzi Shir. You do a partial shir. You don't eat the full amount, but you eat less than the prescribed amount. It's not limited to Yom Kippur. It's same thing with all year round. Let's say if you eat a Big Mac, so then, assuming we had a temple and a Sanhedrin, a court of law, you'd be liable to a good old-fashioned whooping. You'd get makis. But if I just took a bite of the hamburger, the Big Mac, so then that's a dispute between Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, whether Chatzi Shir is asa min haTorah or asa midrabanan. Well, everyone agrees it's prohibited to take a bite of the Big Mac, but do you violate a biblical prohibition or a rabbinical prohibition? So Rav Yochanan says it's a biblical prohibition, and Reish Lakish says no, it's only a rabbinical prohibition. We follow the opinion of Rav Yochanan, who says it's a biblical position. So therefore, even if you eat less than the prescribed amount, you still violate a biblical prohibition. So what is the gain by eating less than the prescribed amount? You don't get kares. You would not get the penalty of kares on Yom Kippur. During the year, if you're eating non-kosher, you wouldn't get the penalty of makis if you had less than the prescribed amount of chatzi shir, but it's still prohibited. So, ma'achino so kal, so therefore, what many of the posts come in, if a person's a chole sheyesh bo sakana, someone whose life is in danger, so then they can eat on Yom Kippur, but they should eat less than there's a certain, I'm not going into the details, but there's a certain amount of food you have to eat in a certain amount of time in order to violate this penalty of kares. So what they say is you should eat less than, to eat a little bit at a time. So therefore you spread it out, unless of course part of the sickness is you have to eat everything right away, then you just do that. But assuming you could spread out the food, let's say you have to drink 64 ounces of water or juice. So you take a shot glass, an ounce, and you have an ounce every 10 minutes. I'm just making up the number now. As opposed to just sitting down and having 8 cups of water. That's what the post can recommend to do. You have to eat less than the again, assuming that you don't have to have that amount of food. If you have to have 32 ounces right away, obviously then you drink it. But assuming it's just you have to have the food over a certain amount of time, it doesn't make a difference. So many posts can say that's what you have to do. The Selevan family, based on Rav Chaim Selevan, that's the Rav from Boston, so his grandfather, he has a different opinion, based on a Magid Mishnah in Hilchos Shabbos, that says that, so he points out that it says a chol on Shabbos, you could do kol tzarcho, you could do take care of all of its needs. And even needs that say that they don't necessarily, the person's not going to die from. So for, let's say, a woman who's during childbirth. So al pi halacha, we view her as a chola, even though today with modern technology, it usually goes smoothly. Nevertheless, we recognize the miracle, and we assume any woman going through childbirth is considered someone in a state of danger. So let's say the woman wanted something done to make her more comfortable. Let's say the bed had to be moved in the hospital, but it only with electric, and there was no one else to move it. So then, even though that thing doesn't necessarily affect, you can do life or death, the Maggid Mishnah writes, you can take care of all the needs of a chola on Shabbos. So Rav Chaim has a whole discussion, but what Rav Chaim basically conclusion is, he says, if someone is a chola sheyesh bo sakana, someone whose life is in danger right now, so then don't worry, eat normally. However you would eat when it wasn't Yom Kippur, eat the same way. Don't start going around a little bit of an ounce here. If you're in danger, now I'm in a life-threatening situation, you can eat kedarko, eat normally. What he says, when do you have to drink the 1 ounce cups and eat less than the amount? That's if right now you're a chole she'ein bo sakana. Right now I'm not in danger. Right now I'm fine. No, I'm not fine. I'm still sick, but it's not a life-threatening sickness. I am sick, and by definition, what do you mean someone's sick? A chole she'ein bo sakana means someone who cannot function normally. They have a terrible migraine headache, they have to go to bed, they can't just function. They're forced to lie down on the couch on the bed. That's a chole she'ein bo sakana. So all other fast days, it's less of an issue. But it's more of a problem on Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur is the only biblical fast day. But a chole she'ein bo sakana, who right now the person's fine, but based on different medical history and illness, that if they don't eat in the next 12 hours, they will put themselves in a life-threatening situation, or at least a potential. That's all we need, is a potential life-threatening. If it might happen, obviously I don't mean 99 to 1, but there's that it's medically speaking, it's a likelihood, even if not, even less, as long as it's a doubt that it might happen. So then, that's what Rav Chaim says. That's when you have to eat pachas mikshir. If you're in danger right now, eat normally. If you're not in danger, but by not eating, you'll end up being in danger, that's when you have to eat. Again, the most opinions is the first opinion, that even when you're in a life-threatening situation. However, my Rebbeim go with Rav Soloveitchik's approach, and that's the approach I take, that if someone's in a life-threatening situation, you eat normally, you don't play around when someone's life is in danger. However, if it's someone who's not in danger now, but by not eating will lead them into danger, so then you have to worry about the shiurim. So if you're a chole sheyesh, so on Yom Kippur, if you're a chole sheyesh bo sakana, you're allowed to eat. How you have to eat, that's a discussion we just went through. If you're a chole she'ein bo sakana, you're really not allowed to eat. Better to stay in bed all day and just don't go to shul. That's itself is a discussion. That's not the topic tonight, but that's what. But a chole she'ein bo sakana, by not eating, which will lead to a danger, so then that person can eat less than the amount. And again, taking medicine is a different question, because eating medicine probably isn't considered eating, and therefore, obviously, if you need a medicine that you need, so then obviously you should take it. If you can take it without water, that's what everyone recommends. If you can't swallow without water, so then they try to give different recommendations of what to do. But those are some general rules that are. So on Yom Kippur, if you're a chole sheyesh bo sakana, you have to eat. Not only can you eat, you're obligated to eat.
Like diabetic.
Right. So the diabetic, that would be one, taking the insulin. Right. So diabetic, right, would be one of the cases. Like, depending, I guess, how severe it is. But even if, by knowing if you don't eat, over the next 24 hours, I know people who have done it. I mean, they haven't listened, and they did, and they almost died from it. So, of course, the diabetic is one of the examples. You have to go ahead and eat. So again, if you're not in danger right now, then you should be eating less than the prescribed amount. But if you're right now, again, we'll have to know all the specifics of a case, of what it is. But either way, again, if there's any doubt, then obviously you always eat, because you might be a chole sheyesh bo sakana. So let's say you're a chole sheyesh bo sakana on Yom Kippur. So you have to eat. That's not a question. You are obligated to eat. How you have to eat, that's a machlokas we discussed, but you have to eat. So what about making kiddush? I don't mean just a regular Yom Kippur, not this year when it's on Shabbos, I'll get to right now. A regular Yom Kippur, it falls out on Tuesday. Because Yom Kippur also is Shabbat Shabbaton, it's also a Yontif, and we make Kiddush. In fact, Yom Kippur is actually an interesting discussion, because Yom Kippur is in between Shabbos and Yontif. It's stricter than a regular Yontif. I don't mean because we can't eat, but we can't, you can't cook either and do different things. And you can't do malacha like on Shabbos. However, it's not, in other words, it has characteristics of Shabbos and has characteristics of Yontif. So the question is, do we view it as a more stricter Yontif, or do we classify it as a more lenient Shabbos? But either way, since it's a hybrid, it's somewhere in between. So either way, on Shabbos we make Kiddush, or on Yontif we make Kiddush. So therefore, what about Yom Kippur? Should we make Kiddush? On Yom Kippur that falls out on Tuesday, someone has to eat, should they make Kiddush? You say no.
On Friday.
I'm not saying this year, I'll get to that. Yeah. Right now I'm saying on a Tuesday. Yeah. So the Magen Avraham says, like you, Ein Sarach L'Kadesh, no Kiddush. Okay. If you're eating on a Tuesday on Yom Kippur, you don't make Kiddush. And then he quotes, and then they quote other Achronim. The reason is, Kevan Shahayom Gorim, well, it's the day of Yom Kippur which forbids you to eat. Rak Shepikuach Nefesh Gorim Lo Heter. It's only that because your life is in danger that permits you to eat. And therefore, he says, you treat the day, to you, Havi Didei Kechol. You treat this day like it's a regular day of the week. If you're a Cholesh Yesh Bo Sakana, whatever you would eat or whatever medicine you would take on a regular weekday, Yom Kippur, we treat Yom Kippur like a weekday in terms of a Cholah. And therefore he says, Ein Bo Lo Kiddush V'Lo Alkos. And therefore, the conclusion of the post-Gemar, we don't make Kiddush because the Yesh L'Chosh Lo Bracha, because we don't want to get into a issue of a Bracha L'Vatola, of an unnecessary Bracha. So that seems to be the consensus view on Yom Kippur that falls out on Tuesday. What about this year? Yom Kippur is falling out on Shabbos, Friday night. And now you're a Cholesh Yesh Bo Sakana, and you have to eat. Does this change? Is it any different that the Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos or it falls out on Tuesday? Would this person have to make Kiddush before he eats?
No.
So let's go see. So before we answer that question, we need some background information about what about a healthy person this Friday night, someone who's not sick, someone who's going to fast this Yom Kippur. Does he have to make Kiddush? Because why? We know the Torah tells us, it's in the number 5 of the 10 Commandments, Zachar es Yom HaShabbos L'Kadsho. Remember the Shabbos day and sanctify it. And from here, the Gemara and Psachim, other places, learn out the obligation of making Kiddush on Shabbos. And we also extend it to Yom Tov as well, but the real din is by Shabbos. So I have a mitzvah min Torah to make Kiddush every Friday night like we do. So what about this Friday night? There's a mitzvah of Kiddush. Is it still there? Is it not there?
No, it's not.
What happened to it? It disappeared?
As soon as Shabbat begins, you have to fast. So you can't make Kiddush.
So we'll have to see. So in the Shiloh's V'Tshuvas Semach Tzedek, he quotes from the Tshuvas Harashba in the name of the Rambam. The Rambam writes, I quote from the Rambam in Hilchos Shavuos, Perek Aleph Halacha Vav, the Min HaTorah Mechayovim B'Shabbos L'Chol Kizayis Pas. Really, on the Torah level, one is obligated to eat bread on Shabbos, and then he gets into the issue of Chatzi Shir. So we see that. So in general rule, there's a mitzvah of eating on Shabbos, making Kiddush and eating. However, so why don't we know we don't go ahead, we don't go home afterwards and make Kiddush, why not? So they explain, because since the Torah tells us as well, Ta'anu es nafsho seichem, that on Yom Kippur there's a mitzvah of inoi, to afflict ourselves, i.e. to fast, Av k'shachol b'Shabbos, and we know Yom Kippur is the only fast day that we even do on Shabbos. All the other fast days are pushed off. Yom Kippur is the only fast day we do on Shabbos. So we see Bitla Torah's mitzvah achila b'Shabbos. So the mitzvah of oneg Shabbos gets nullified as well. And therefore there is no mitzvah on Yom Kippur Shachol b'Shabbos. So it goes like this. So we obviously know we're not going to have a meal, but the bottom line is this: if there's a mitzvah of Kiddush on Shabbos, so why should Yom Kippur take away the mitzvah of Kiddush? So who says it does? Because in fact it goes like this. The Rambam writes, what is the mitzvah min ha-Torah of Kiddush? How does one fulfill the biblical commandment of Kiddush? So the Rambam writes, Kiddush b'dvarim. With words alone, one fulfills the mitzvah of Kiddush. So therefore, basically, that's what the Rambam writes. So the Magen Avraham writes, based on the Rambam, when we daven Friday night, and you say the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekadesh HaShabbos, you fulfill your biblical obligation of Kiddush. Why do we go home and make Kiddush over a cup of wine? That's only rabbinical, that we want to fulfill the mitzvah Zachrei al Yayin. But biblically speaking, we don't need wine. So the Magen Avraham says, we fulfill our mitzvah by davening Friday night. So the Magen Avraham says, how do I know that's true? How do I know that the Rambam's right, that you fulfill your mitzvah with words alone by davening Shmoneh Esrei Friday night? You guessed it. This Friday night's the proof. Because what do we do when we daven Yom Kippur at Friday night? So we fulfill our biblical mitzvah of Kiddush. We don't need wine. We fulfill it with words. There's no problem with making Kiddush on Yom Kippur. The problem is eating, not making Kiddush. So the Magen Avraham writes, we see from Yom Kippur night, just like we fulfill when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, just like that night we don't make Kiddush over a cup of wine. So how do we fulfill our mitzvah? In Shmoneh Esrei. So just like it works on Yom Kippur, Shachol b'Shabbos, so too it works all year round. And that's the psak of the Magen Avraham, that you fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush all year round by davening Shmoneh Esrei Friday night and saying Makadesh HaShabbos.
Lighting the candles.
Yeah, well, lighting the candles is something else. That could be an answer up another question, because there's a famous question about if we know women are obligated in Kiddush as min ha-Torah. Women are biblically obligated in Kiddush Friday night. They're the same as the men. Why they're the same as the men? We have a general rule. A woman is exempt from a mitzvah aseh shahazman grama. A woman is exempt from a time-oriented mitzvah. And last I checked, Shabbos, Kiddush on Shabbos is a time-oriented mitzvah. So why is a woman obligated in Kiddush at all? She should be exempt. So the Gemara in Brachas, Chafam and Beis 20b and Shavuos 20b makes the following drasha: Kol sheyeshnu b'shmira, yeshnu b'sechira. Whoever is included in the prohibition of keeping Shabbos is also included in the positive mitzvah of Kiddush. So therefore, they point out that women are obligated min ha-Torah in Kiddush. They're the same level as men. So that's fine. The problem is like this. So the Dogel Meravava, one of the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch, asked the following question. Again, it's changed a little bit today, but it's still probably true. Most women do not come to shul Friday night, and most women do not daven Friday night, period. More do now than before, But whether it's, so whatever the percentages are, if a woman davens, then there is no question. If a woman davens Friday night, Shemona Esrei, so this one wouldn't be a question. But for the woman who doesn't, so the problem is like this. The man davened, so he fulfilled his mitzvah already biblically. Why is he going home to make kiddush? To fulfill his rabbinic obligation of kiddush over wine. But his wife is biblically obligated because she didn't daven yet. You know, if she did, it's not a question. It's a fact. That's a suggestion, about the woman should daven and avoid the problem. Let's assume a woman doesn't daven and the problem's here. So what? So why can't a man make kiddush for his wife? Because the problem is, we have a general rule. If I'm going to do a mitzvah for you, I have to be at least equally obligated, if not more. So if we're both rabbinically obligated in something, or if I'm biblically obligated and you're rabbinically, I can do the mitzvah for you. But if I'm rabbinically obligated and you're biblically obligated, I can't do the mitzvah for you. You have a higher level obligation. So the question is, how do we explain the prevalent custom of husbands going home and making kiddush for their wives? In most cases, the husband is davened and the wife hasn't. So the wife is biblically obligated, and the woman is only rabbinically. The woman is biblically obligated, and the man is only rabbinically obligated. So there are many answers. One answer is that let the woman daven. That's not an answer. That's just giving us. So that's telling you to avoid the problem. But assuming you have the problem. So some suggest that since we have a principle, mitzvah strichas kavana, we have a discussion in the Gemara whether mitzvahs require intent or not. What do you mean? Some opinions say they don't. Do you mean I could just daydream during the mitzvah? So of course not. The whole dispute is post facto. If I didn't do the mitzvah, everyone agrees you need kavanah. But if I already did the mitzvah, now the question is, must I repeat it? So that's the dispute in the Talmud. We paskin on biblical mitzvahs require intent. So what some suggest to do, so first of all, most people don't even know that fulfilling the mitzvah of kiddush in 20, so then it's not a problem. They don't even know to have the kavanah. But if you happen to hear the shir, or you happen to learn the halacha, and you know, so then one should have negative kavanah. You should have intent to fulfill your mitzvah of tefillah's Arvis, evening service, but don't have a mind to fulfill your mitzvah of kiddush. And then therefore you don't fulfill your mitzvah, and you go home, you're still biblically obligated. Others suggest that the whole Magen Avram is wrong, that it's not true. You can't fulfill your mitzvah of kiddush in shul, in Shemona Esrei, because in the Shabbos Shemona Esrei, the Gemara says, in order to fulfill your mitzvah of kiddush, you also have to mention the Exodus from Egypt. There is no mention of the Exodus of Egypt in your Shemona Esrei, Makadesh or Shabbos. So therefore some say it's not a problem anyway. So either way, that's what the Magen Avram writes, that the same way it works all year round, it works Yom Kippur. What about going home, making it over a cup of wine? So that's only rabbinically. So obviously the rabbis never said to make kiddush over a cup of wine when it falls on Yom Kippur. So that's the simple shot is, we will fulfill the mitzvah of kiddush Friday night by davening, when we daven our Shemona Esrei Friday night, Yom Kippur, we will fulfill our mitzvah of kiddush. And therefore, what about over a cup of wine? Since we're not eating, obviously the rabbi said that b'makam d'Rabbanan will go, that on a din d'Rabbanan, so the rabbis didn't tell you to do it. The question is, what about someone who is going to eat. So most of it, the healthy person isn't going to be eating, so it's not an issue. So if you're not eating, you'll fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush and Shmona Esrei. But that's if you're a healthy individual. Let's say you're an unhealthy individual and you have to eat. So then what? Do you make Kiddush? So Rabbi Akiva Eiger seems to have a Kiddush to seem to say the Tzara Kiddush, that Rabbi Akiva Eiger thinks that if you're going to eat on Shabbos, you should make Kiddush. However, there are many dissenters on the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Chayi Adam, the Mishnah Brura, and they hold even this year one should not make Kiddush. Because since it's a question, it's a bracha l'vatala. You don't want to get involved in making a blessing in vain. And that's what he quotes Rabbi Akiva Eiger, poskim, they say, and what do you do when you have a conflict you're not sure? The li nira, to me it appears, the shei al tasa. We have a general principle that if when in doubt, do without. It's the equivalent of if you have not sure what to do, so you can either do something that might be wrong, or you cannot do something that might be wrong. In other words, is it what's worse, to make Kiddush when you shouldn't make it, or not to make Kiddush when you should? So we have a general principle, shei v'al tasa adif. Better not to make Kiddush, or this is an example, but for anything, better not to make Kiddush when you should have than to make Kiddush when you should not have, because that's a bracha l'vatala. And therefore he says, since it's a question, he understands Rabbi Akiva Eiger's point, and therefore he says, better not to make Kiddush. Hech yavarach nusach berkas HaKiddush. And therefore, he says, Im yirta yaharia belibo. He said, if you want to, you could think about it in your heart, or think the words, but don't actually say them. And that's what the Har Tzvi, or Tzvi Pesach Frame points out, to be Yom Kippur Shachol b'Shabbos, when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, Kevin she'b'Shabbos zu ein Kiddush ala kos, since there is no cup, L'chein b'schira Shabbos she'b'tzilas aris, therefore you should have in mind, it's like all year round, I said, you should have negative intent. Just have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush. Just have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of davening and not Kiddush, but specifically this Friday night, you should have in mind, when you're davening Friday night, to have in mind to fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush. And that's what he brings down. Like we mentioned, the Magen Avraham, who writes, the tefillah yotzim midaraisi lechovas Kiddush hayom, as we just said, that the Magen Avraham says all year round, you fulfill your mitzvah of Kiddush and Shmona Esrei, and the Dagul Mervava, as he brings down the question about a man coming home and his wife to make Kiddush, what you should do, and therefore they point out that since Rabbi Akiva Eiger does say to make Kiddush, but the consensus view seems to be not to make Kiddush, or best if you want to think about it. So in that sense, it comes out really, there's no difference between Yom Kippur during the week. According to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, there's a difference. According to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, if Yom Kippur was on Tuesday and you had to eat, you would not make Kiddush, because Kiddush on Yom Tov is only d'Rabbanan anyway. So therefore, he says if Yom Kippur falls out on Tuesday, he says one should not make Kiddush. However, because he says the Kiddush Yom Tov d'Rabbanan will tiknu klal Kiddush b'Yom Kippurim. That's Rabbi Akiva Eiger's difference. He says Kiddush on Yom Tov is only rabbinical, so therefore don't make it. However, but Yom Kippur, so then, and if going to the rabbi, he obviously said you don't have to make Kiddush when it falls out on Yom Kippur. About Yom Kippur Shachol b'Shabbos, the obligation to say Kiddush is Daraisa, and therefore he thinks that maybe you should make Kiddush. So, the minhag, I think the minhag seems to be against Rabbi Akiva Eiger. I don't know if there's a minhag, I don't know how many people do it, but the minhag seems to be that one would not make Kiddush if they have to eat, even this year when Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos. So that's the issue of someone who has to eat and they have to make Kiddush, whether they someone who has to eat, should they make Kiddush on Yom Kippur? Definitely not when Yom Kippur falls out during the week. This year it's a dispute between Rabbi Akiva Eiger and others, and we seem to go with that. One last point, since the hour is getting late, is that there's a discussion, what's the definition of eating? We all know what eating is, we put food in our mouth. But al pi halakha, legally speaking, so it's a discussion, the Gemara in Chulin, whether it's hanaz garon or hanaz ma'ayav. In other words, is it when it goes down my throat, or if it's when it goes to my intestines when I feel it down here. So that's a machloket again, Rav Yochanan Reish Lakish. So therefore, what's the difference? The difference is, let's say a person ate let's say all year round, a person ate non-kosher, let's say by mistake, or as a friend told me the case, someone went in to get some cake, it was dark, he didn't want to open the light, it was in the dormitory, and he didn't want to turn the light because his friend was sleeping, so he started eating, and then he noticed it tasted a little funny. He went outside in the hallway and he saw the cake was infested with bugs. I don't mean there might have been a bug on the lettuce, but he was actually eating ants, whatever they were. So that itself is probably a punishment enough, but the question is, we wanted to know, should he try to throw up, vomit, to get the bugs out of him? So at first glance it would seem to be a dispute between, not whether you have to vomit or not, but so according to Rabbi Yochanan, it wouldn't make a difference. You already violated Hanaz Garon, you already ate it. So there's no point, there's nothing more you could do, except tshuva now. But according to Reish Lakish, I'm not saying he would say you should or shouldn't, but then we could entertain the question whether if you can throw up the food, should you do it before it gets down? So the Minchas Chinuch has a Chiddush, that's only by all year round, but by Yom Kippur, where it's a different prohibition. The prohibition isn't in Achila, but it's to afflict yourself. He wants to say everybody agrees that it's Hanas Me'ayis. So according to the Minchas Chinuch, on Yom Kippur, if one ate, and he had the ability to throw up his food, he could still do it before it goes down. However, most don't assume, like the Minchas Chinuch, that they say even Yom Kippur is no different than all year round, and perhaps the prohibition is Hanaz Garon, and therefore, that case, but that gets into the whole issue like intravenous feeding, because you're not actually, getting in, it's not considered achila, etc. So that's so those are some of the issues regarding this year. The Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos is relevant to all the time, but specifically this year, the Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos. Someone who's not eating, the issue of Kiddush, so we say you fulfill it in the davening, and certainly the one who is eating, if when Yom Kippur falls out on Tuesday, there's no discussion, but there is a discussion at least this year, and the consensus view seems to be no Kiddush as well this year, even if you are eating. We'll discuss a beautiful thought from Rav Soloveitchik on the power of tshuva on Yom Kippur. So there's a famous Gemara in Tainus. The Gemara tells us the two happiest days of the year One is Yom Kippur. Contrary to popular belief, Yom Kippur is one of the happiest days of the year. People make the mistake because it's very similar functionally to Tisha B'Av, which is the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. It's a day where we remember the destruction of the temple, and we don't do the same thing. So therefore, a lot of people equate the 2 days, even though they're diametrically opposed. Tisha B'Av is a time of mourning and the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, a day of Avelis, and Yom Kippur is the happiest day of the year, because as we'll see, as we're forgiven for our sins. And that's how we begin. Ar Zerah Latzadik, Simcha, we begin off with joy. So, it says Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. So the Gemara goes on, many different reasons, different things happen on Tu B'Av that we're happy. Just to list a couple, we're not going into it, but the fact that during the Bar Kokhba rebellion, the people were able to be buried, even though the bodies were rotting for a long time, on Tu B'Av, they were able to be buried at a later date, or the Jews stopped dying in the Midbar. So the Gemara goes on, many different things that happen. That's for a Tu B'Av Shir. But let's focus on Yom Kippur. So what does the Gemara say? Why is Yom Kippur the happiest day of the year? Because it's a day of Slicha U'Mechila. It's a day of forgiveness. And the Gemara says, Uyom Shenitnu Bo Rucho Shniyos. It's a day the second tablets were given. So the simple reading of the Gemara is the 2 different points. It's a day of forgiveness, and it was a day also we got the second tablets. There comes the one who have Soloveitchik and says, no, they're all one. It's only because the second tablets were given on Yom Kippur that Yom Kippur is a day of forgiveness. In other words, if hypothetically the second tablets were not given on Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur would not be a day of Slicha U'Mechila. So what's the connection between the second tablets being given and having the ability to do tshuva? What does one have to do with the no soap radio? What does one have to do with the other? So Rav Soloveitchik explained, based on the Soloveitchik family, his Mishpacha, the Beis Halevi, Rav Soloveitchik's father was Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, his father was Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, and his father was the Beis Halevi. So he quotes from his, I guess, great-grandfather, the Beis Halevi, that quotes a Medrash. The Medrash says, what was the difference between the first tablets and the second tablets? In other words, what was the difference and what was contained inside them? So the Medrash says something very interesting. The first tablets contained everything. By everything I mean, whatever everything means, but all the written law and all the oral law. It was all contained, it must have been a big tablet, all contained in the first tablet. And in the second tablet, only the written law was put, and not the oral law. So what's the difference? So what? So we know we have a principle as follows. There are different levels of sanctity. There's something which is called Gufei Kedusha, something which is that inherent sanctity, i.e. a Sefer Torah. The mezuzah, not the cover, the cloth, the actual parchment. The parchment inside the tefillin. Those are all Gufei Kedusha, inherent Kedusha. There's a second level called Tashmishe Kedusha, something which helps to protect It's used. So, for instance, the mantle on the Sefer Torah, the cover of the Sefer Torah, that's Tashmishe Kedusha. The cover, or perhaps a saran wrap on the mezuzah, that's Tashmishe Kedusha. And so that's the second level. And there's a third level of Tashmish to Tashmish. It's already removed. It's further removed. In other words, so the difference is like this: Tashmishe Kedusha. If, let's say, the mantle of the Sefer Torah rips, could you throw it in the garbage? No, you got to bury it. It needs kfura, burial. But let's say something which is tashmish to tashmish, it wasn't in direct contact with something which is kadosh, you could throw out. Even, let's say, a mitzvah. Let's say a shofar that became no good. So I'm not recommending it, but but they say if you throw it out, you put it in a separate bag, you wrap it up separately, and then you throw it out. But it doesn't have any inherent, only while you're doing the mitzvah it has kedusha. But after the mitzvah is finished, Tashmishe mitzvah and nizrakim, the things that are used for the mitzvah you can throw out. So, and clearly, obviously, if a Sefer Torah becomes pasul, obviously, you don't throw it out, you bury it. But we're focusing on the difference between the second and third level. So, comes along where Selevan says as follows: that so originally, when the first luchos were given, the Torah, everything was given on it, the oral and written was. So, what were the Jewish people? We were Tashmishe Kedusha. We were taking care of watching over the Torah, but we didn't have any inherent connection to it. We were more secondary.
When you say oral, how could it have the names of all the Rabbonim of the Gemara in there?
No, so again, that's a discussion. Whatever oral law was available then, that's what I'm saying. It's a measure, so we don't know exactly whatever oral law means. It'd be a good question knowing exactly what was on it. We don't know exactly. We could speculate. But so we were just like Tashmishe Kedusha. But when we got the second tablets, we are Gufe Kedusha. We are like the ink. We are like the parchment on the Torah. They need us. We explain Lo Bashamayimi. We developed the oral law to explain the Torah. So we're part of the Torah itself. So the Jewish people are. So at first, when there was only the Luchos Rishonos, we had the status of Tashmishe Kedusha. Only we were secondary. But once the second tablets were given, only the written law was given, and we now are part of the process, so we are inherently kaddish. What's the difference? The difference is, if something which is only a Tashmishe Kedusha gets defiled, it loses its sanctity. It's not worth anything. It doesn't have Kedusha anymore. But something which has inherent sanctity never loses its Kedusha. So Rav Selevan explained beautifully like this: if we just had the Luchas Rishonos, we would have been like Tashmishe Kedusha. So once we sinned, that's it. We get thrown out. We have no more Kedusha, because we're only Tashmishe Kedusha, and if we sin, that's the end of it. We are Moa Behektish. But now that the Luchos Shniyos were given, and we are Gufei Kadosh, we are part of the Torah itself, so even if we sin, we don't throw out the Sefer Torah. The Kedusha remains, and we have to work, and we have to fix the Sefer Torah. We have to work it ourselves. But that's the pshat in the Gemara. The Gemara says Yom Kippur is the happiest day of the year. Why? So the Gemara seems to say two things, because it's a day of forgiveness, that's why we're happy, and also it's a day that the second tablets were given. So with salvation, no, they're not two separate things, it's all the same. And now we understand it. It's only because the second tablets were given, we have the potential of doing tshuva. Because if we were just Tashmishe Kedusha, then once we sin, that's it, we get thrown out. We're finished. The Jewish people is over. It's only because the second tablets were given, we became part of the Torah itself. So now, even though we sin, we can still do tshuva. And that's the explanation in the Gemara about that tshuva is dependent. Tshuva is only theologically possible because we got the Luchos Shniyos. Without the second tablets, tshuva would not be theologically possible. That's the beautiful pshat of Selevan. And one last thing to conclude, that we know we begin Yom Kippur called Nidre, etc., but then we go into Ma'ariv. And what do we do different in Shema? We say Baruch Shein Kavod Malchuso. We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Hashem Echad. We always say it out loud. Normally we say Baruch Shein Kavod Malchuso. We say it silently. On Yom Kippur we say it B'kol Ram. We all scream Baruch Shein Kavod Malchuso. Why? Because it's a whole long discussion, but basically we're like the angels. The angels, we're like angels on Yom Kippur because we're not eating. And since the angels said, since the angels screamed it out loud, so that's why we compromise. There was at one point the Torah doesn't say anything about Baruch Shein Kavod. The angels screamed it out, so we compromise. We say it softly. But on Yom Kippur, when we're like angels, we're wearing white. We're not fasting. We're wearing a kittel. So therefore, we scream out Baruch Shein Kavod because we're like angels. Okay, that's fine. However, if you, and that's what we do the whole Yom Kippur. When we get to Motzai Yom Kippur, when we daven Ma'ariv, Saturday night after Yom Kippur is over, we say Shema, and what do we do? Do we do Baruch Shein Kavod out loudly, or we do it quietly? Saturday night, the Shema, the first Shema after Yom Kippur, in the evening service, do we do it silently?
Silently, because no longer Yom Kippur.
Correct, we do it silently. So the question the commentators ask is an obvious question. When are we more like angels? We just had our big Erev Yom Kippur where we have a mitzvah to eat all day, all the time. We're eating, we have a big festive meal, Erev Yom Kippur. And we walk into Kol Nidre, we're full already. In fact, many times we ate too much. We're stuffed. So, where am I more like an angel? At the beginning of Yom Kippur when I just ate 10 minutes ago, a festive meal? Or 25 hours later when I haven't eaten a thing and now I'm davening Ma'ariv, I'm more like an angel then, so it should be the opposite. Yom Kippur night I should say Baruch Shein Kavod silently. But when after Yom Kippur is over, I should say it aloud. So how come we do it the reverse? So the commentators explain a tremendous yesod, a foundation. And of course, like any rule, it can be abused, like I'll explain in a second. A person is where his mind is. So, like I used to tell, like when the teacher used to ask me, how come you weren't in class? Why were you cutting class? Why were you in the gym playing basketball? I said, no, I was in class. They said, no, you were. I said, I was. My mind was in class. I was playing basketball. I was thinking of class. They didn't really go for it. That's perverting the principle. But the principle goes, the person where the mind is. So So let me ask you something. So it's true Friday Yom Kippur night, Kol Nidre, you just ate 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, a half an hour ago, and you're full. But what is your focus on? Your next 25 hours is the focus is going to be on tefillah, on prayer, on tshuva, on repentance, how to become better, ask forgiveness to my friends, etc. But we all know Motzai Yom Kippur, we're all thinking, what am I going to break? I wonder what we're breaking the fast on. Are we having bagel and lox? Are we having poached salmon? Are we having a cheese and onion omelet? Different customs among different families. Maybe some have meat, who knows? But you think already your mind's on the food. So if your mind's on the food, you're no longer an angel anymore. So Motzei Yom Kippur, you're already thinking, your mind's on the food. You know, you say Baruch Shem Kavod silently.